The Portland Trailblazers have been one of the weirder franchises in recent history. They've had a franchise star in Damian Lillard, who's been on the top of the league for quite a while now and is still one of the top 11 players in the league in my opinion. They've made the playoffs all but 1 year since Dame came into the league and have made the Western Conference once, where they probably peaked as a franchise around Dame. Since they haven't been able to do that much due to their defense and many more issues, Damian Lillard, who's been one of the most loyal players in the league and has a reputation for his loyalty, has finally even entertained the idea of acting out of Portland. So this gives the franchise some issues and some urgency to deal with. And with the Western Conference being completely open right now and full of uncertainty with all the teams due to injuries and other stuff, this might be Portland's best chance of making a run again. So today I want to talk about the Portland Trailblazers and each player in their team and if this run is actually possible.
They be like, what? Can you teach me how to dirty? You know why? Cause all the bitches love it. All I need is a beat that's super bumpin'. And for you to back it up and dump it.
Leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already. I drop regular NBA content and with the NBA season going on right now, I'd really appreciate it. And I'm very near to reaching 200 subscribers, so I'd appreciate your subscription. So now let's get into it. The Trailblazers this offseason made some moves. They traded Derrick Jones Jr. and a first for Larry Nance. They signed Cody Zeller, Tony Snell, Ben McLemore and Dennis Smith Jr. in free agency. Then they re-signed Norman Powell and extended Greg Brown. You could say it was a very uneventful offseason with the expectations the Blazers team had to for making changes, and you could say with how urgently they had to do things, Blazers didn't really do much. But there wasn't really much the Blazers could do. They don't really have trade pieces which would allow them to upgrade at any position or have the market attraction to bring in any new players from free agency. But they did the best they could do in my opinion. Signing quality role players like Cody Zeller, who doesn't need to start like he did and play big minutes in Charlotte and get exploited, but he has to play only limited minutes off the bench, so it's going to provide them really quality minutes in my opinion. Ben McLemore and Tony Snell are great 3-point shooters and decent rotational players who can space the floor really well for Damian Lillard and the Trailblazers and give them some more wing rotational minutes. And Dennis Smith Jr. was an upside pickup because they don't really have anything to lose with playing him, and if it can be anything useful, it gives them more flexibility with guys like Anthony Simons and possibly increase the ceiling of this team. The main move the Blazers made this offseason was trading for one of my favorite and most underrated guys in the league in Larry Nance Jr. Larry Nance Jr. is going to be an amazing pickup for this team. He's an amazing defender who is very versatile on defense. He's a 6'7" power forward who plays way bigger than his size and can play any position from small forward to center. He's a great rebounder too and will allow the Trailblazers to play small ball lineups which will overwhelm opposing teams offensively. He's a decent spot-up shooter, shooting above league average from 3 on 3 attempts per game, and is an amazing finisher at the rim, shooting above 70% from there for a lot of his career. He's a great roll man on the pick and roll and will allow Dame to still run his lethal pick and roll when Nurkic is off the floor. He's a great finisher and an underrated short roll passer, so he provides more versatility on the pick and roll for the Blazers than Nurkic did. He's just an amazing addition to this team on both sides of the floor, and if utilized properly, can raise the defense of this team and improve it by quite a lot, and nullify the defensive mistakes the star offensive backcourt causes on defense. Let's move on to the guy they re-signed this offseason, Norman Powell. Powell has always been a slightly weird fit in the starting lineup since they traded for him last deadline. He's a great player without a doubt, but he doesn't really add anything new to their lineups. He's a great shooter and has some off the dribble ability and has decent potential off the ball. But these are things the Blazers already have. His efficiency took a massive dip last year on the Blazers compared to the first half of his season in Toronto, and the reason for that is they didn't really let him play on the ball much, with his usage dropping and him not really getting as many touches as he wanted. Anyways, he's still a great offensive player and a good positional defender in the shooting guard position due to his above average wingspan. What I feel the Blazers should do is run Powell as a sixth man, because he is just that type of player and he's the kind of guy who will be a great spark off the bench and give them a massive boost. He can be given the ball more in this role and allow the Blazers to create offense even without both CJ and Dame. This allows the Blazers to start a lineup of Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Robert Covington, Larry Nance Jr. and Yusuf Nurkic, which sounds so much better defensively for them. So unless they're planning to do this and play Powell as a sixth man, it was a very weird extension because he's a very much redundancy on their starting lineup. So now let's go over this team positionally. Starting off with the point guard position, we have the clutchest player in the league, Damian Lillard. And as a backup, they have a decently good player in Anthony Simons. Damian Lillard is absolutely ridiculous and there's no other way to put it. He's one of the greatest shooters of all time and one of the best on-ball players in the league right now and all time. The high pick and roll which he runs is one of the best plays in the league right now. The fact that defenders have to stay with him forever and even the slightest of space from literally anywhere after the half court creates so much more opportunities for players around him, and the pick and roll he runs creates some of the most open shots in the league. He averaged 8 assists per game last season and they weren't really like flashy passes and skip passes from one half or another or any crazy shit like that. It's just that he's so dangerous with the ball in his hands, guarding him on the pick and roll is very tough and almost always leaves a man open, and Lillard more often than not finds this player for an open shot or an open cut. Beyond the arc is where majority of his production comes through, as 53% of his attempted field goals last season were from the 3-point line. But he's a very capable finisher too. He's really fast and can get past almost any defender in the league due to how much gravity he possesses beyond the arc. This allows him to drive into the lane and penetrate the defense. He's a great finisher, shooting 63% from 0 to 3 feet on his drives, and he often creates open jumpers again. This is another reason why I like the Larry Nance signing, because as mentioned before, Larry Nance is a good 3-point shooter who is respectable enough to be guarded. So this will allow the Blazers to run multiple 5-out lineups, which will allow Dame to get into the lane easier and either have an easier finish or a more open spot-up shot for any other player on the team. Nance allows the Blazers to do both this and at the same time let them run the regular high pick and roll, which will allow Dame to do his damage as he always does. The 2 games we've seen so far from Dame haven't really been great for him scoring wise. But he's a much more willing passer this season and is creating offense through actual set plays which Terry Stotts didn't run for them last year. This will allow him to improve more as a playmaker this year and make the Blazers offense more lethal with the pieces they have around him. Damian Lillard can be the best player in a series against any player in the league. He has the potential to be that, and we saw how good he can be in the last year playoffs, where he had a historic offensive series and one of the greatest offensive series in NBA history. And when you have a player who can go head to head against literally anyone in the league and can be the best player on the floor on that particular night, you always have a chance to win. Moving on, his backup point guard Anthony Simons is pretty decent at his role. When you have one of the best point guards in the league starting ahead of you, you don't really have to do much as a backup. He's a good shooter who shot 43% from 3 on over 4 attempts per game last season. He's usually the off guard in lineups, so you could say he isn't really the point guard, but he guards most point guards on defense. So as an off guard, he's a good spot up and catch and shoot shooter who has slight potential off the dribble, and he can bring the ball up court and make some plays if he really has to. So there really isn't much to him except that he can possibly up his volume in all of these shot attempts this year and become more of a player and maybe decrease the load on Damian Lillard. Moving on to the shooting guard position, CJ McCollum and a bunch of role guys as backups. CJ McCollum has been perennially underrated. Him and Damian Lillard have been one of the best backcourts almost every year in the league in recent history. CJ is a very quality offensive player who can run the offense at a good level without Dame. He's both a good on and off ball player. He's been amazing as a mid-range shooter his entire career, shooting above 50% from mid-range last season and is a great off the dribble shooter. He took a massive jump last year where he converted all the long twos which he usually takes into 3-pointers, and this increased his volume in scoring, especially before he got injured. So in the 2020 season, 37% of his shots from the 3-point line, and in the 2021 season, he shot 47% of his shots from the 3-point line. and his efficiency actually improved during this change from 3 last year, and hence his increased scoring numbers at that point. I expect that to maintain this year, and his numbers should go up with an entire healthy season. The problem with CJ and Dame together is their defense and how low the defensive ceiling of the team is when they play together. This is why I want them to play Powell off the bench, because when you have Covington, who's an amazing defender, Larry Nance, who's an amazing defender, and Nurkic, who's a good defender, all around both of them, it improves the defense quite a lot. This should solve some of their issues on defense and increase their defensive ceiling. And this is one of the main reasons why I'm higher on the Blazers this year than years prior. Off their bench, they have some good wings who can play the shooting guard position, like Tony Snell and Ben McLemore, who are good 3-point shooters and decent defenders who will give them rotational minutes at the shooting guard or small forward position this year. Some more wings they have on this team are guys like Robert Covington and Nasir Little. Covington is one of the best off-ball defenders in the entire league and a very good on-ball defender. Those steals and blocks don't say much about defense in my opinion. He's a guy who fills up these two stats every year. He was second in defensive box plus minus, first in defensive win shares on the Trailblazers last year. He can be an all-NBA caliber defender, and on offense, he's a respectable 3-point shooter, so he's just a very quality NBA player and a very good wing for what the Blazers need right now. Their backup is another young wing, Nasir Little, who looks like he's finally coming into his own. He was a draft pick they made couple years ago, hoping that he would develop into a very good NBA player for this team, and this year might just be that year for him. He always had the physical tools to be an elite defender, and he always had the physical tools to be a good offensive player. We've seen signs of that in the first 2 games this season, and he's a player this Blazers team can really use, and a guy who raises the ceiling of this team by quite a lot and can be an X factor on this team. He provides the team with some much required energy and is just a very intriguing player who can possibly be really valuable for this team this year. The last player I want to talk about is Jusuf Nurkic. Nurkic is a player I was never really high on, but he's still a very good NBA player and a well above average center in the league. His and Dame's pick and roll has been one of the most lethal pairs in recent history. He's a great role man who possesses quite a lot of gravity on that side of things and makes quite a few off-ball plays for the Blazers. He has some floor stretching ability but has never really capitalized on it. If he can, he'll be a much better player. Defensively too, he's pretty solid and can do a good job against most centers in the league. His main value comes on the pick and roll as a screen setter on offense, and as long as he can be really good on that end this year too, he'll be a very valuable piece for this team as long as he's healthy, because he's also quite injury prone. So why is this the year for the Blazers team? It's simple. The Western Conference is full of uncertainty. The Blazers now have arguably their best team around Damian Lillard. They're much better defensively due to the change in coaching by hiring Chauncey Billups and due to how impactful Larry Nance Jr. is on that end. Offensively, they have one of the best offensive players in the league right now and a lot of great offensive pieces around him. This is still not a top tier contender team, but they are one of the most certain teams because we know what this team will look like, and many of these guys have been playing together for a while now. As long as CJ and Nurk are healthy, they'll be great in the regular season. And with the Nuggets having the Murray injury, the Lakers still not having figured out their fit with Westbrook, the Clippers with their Kawhi injury, the Suns being a very beatable team in my opinion, and the Jazz having their issues in the playoffs, and teams like the Mavericks just not having good supporting cast, the Blazers and the Warriors are probably the two most certain teams in the Western Conference right now. And with a bit of luck and some very possible inhuman performances from Damian Lillard, the Blazers have a good chance of making it to the finals. And if they're ever going to make it around Damian Lillard, this is the year. So that's about it for this video. Please do leave a like on this video and subscribe if you haven't already.